Spring has sprung and it's the perfect time to repot your houseplants because they're about to come out of dormancy and start growing again. But that doesn't mean you should repot them all. A general rule is a pot should be about a third of the size of the plant, so 2/3 plant, 1/3 pot. But sometimes it can depend on the type of plant and the type of roots. Check the bottom of your pots to see if there's any roots peeking through. If there are, it's a pretty good sign they need some more space. My jade plant's about 2/3 plant and my dragon plant's about 3/4 plant. But if you check out the roots, the dragon plant is actually doing a bit better. It's a little bit past the perfect time for repotting. The roots have hit the bottom and started to go around in the shape of the pot, but they haven't gotten tangled up with each other yet. Compared to the jade plant, which is in a bigger pot, but these roots are actually starting to tangle together at the bottom. The perfect time to repot is when the roots hit the bottom but haven't started to curl around in the shape of the pot, because then you can repot without having to disturb the roots too much, which helps stop the plant from getting transplant shock. My Corkscrew Brush, on the other hand, is in a bit of a state. All of these roots aren't surrounded by soil, which is where all the water and nutrients are, and on the top of the plant you can see it's starting to have some problems. There's some dried up bits, which could be down to it not getting enough water, and yellow bits, which can be a sign of nutrient deficiency, or it could be that the roots can't support any more plants, so it's killing off some of the older growth so it can put out new growth, or it could be a combination of all of those things. But if your roots look like this, it's definitely time to get this into a new pot and sort out all of that pot-bound root mess. Plants need pots that are about 1 inch in diameter bigger than the root ball. It's enough space for the roots to grow out into, but not so much that it's going to stay wet for too long between waterings. This satin pothos is in a pot that's way too big, so it's got tiny roots floating around in loads of soil, so all that root-free soil is going to stay wet for ages, because there's no roots to drink the water. Check out all the extra soil, this plant is so sad in this pot. Plus it's in a plastic pot, which means moisture can't evaporate out through the pot either like it could with terracotta. So yeah, it's in less than ideal conditions right now. Terracotta and unglazed clay are porous, so the pot draws water out of the soil, so it will dry out faster and from all sides, so it's kind of more evenly drying out. Any plants that like drier environments seem to do better in them, and thirsty plants do better in plastic. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a plant is move it into a smaller pot or into a pot that's made of a different material. Another way to tell if a plant might need repotting is by the weight after you water it. If the plant still feels really light after watering, then there might be so many roots in the pot that the soil can't hold water because there's just too many roots in there. Also, if your plants start drying out really fast between waterings, it could be because there's so many roots in the pot that they're just drinking the water really quickly. In spring, your plants do start needing more water, so it can be a bit hard to tell, but if you have a plant that seems to be drying out really quickly between waterings, it might need a bigger pot, especially if there's some other signs of it needing repotting. Some plants, like dragon plants, have quite thick roots, so because this one's roots have started growing around the bottom of the pot, it's pushing everything up and the soil's starting to pop out. It's very awkward to water. So that's another thing to look out for. If the soil suddenly seems to be popping out of the pot, then it might be because those roots are building up at the bottom and pushing everything up. Plants like snake plants grow from rhizomes, they're like the ginger that you get in the supermarket. They're really, really hard and they can actually break their pots. I prefer to catch them just before they break their pots, and you can see with this one that the roots are starting to push against the edge and making it bulge out. So it's a good time to get this guy in a new pot. Also with this one, it's starting to get really top heavy. It's very tall and the soil mix is quite light and it's going to start falling over soon, so this guy needs a bigger pot. Some plants do like to be quite cozy in their pots. Peace lilies are another one that like to be a bit snuggly. I feel like they actually grow better when they're getting a bit big for their pots. So there's no big rush with these ones. You can wait until they get just a little bit pot bound before you upgrade them. They also don't mind their roots being messed with too much, so it's not so bad if these get a bit pot bound. Talking about peace lilies, the soil level on this one is getting a bit low because the soil has come out of the drainage holes over time. Sometimes it starts to go down because it just starts to compact when you water it. So if you start to see the roots above soil level, chuck some soil on the top to cover them back up. Some plants are fine with being buried deeper, but this isn't one of them. It grows from crowns which will rot if you bury them. So if you're seeing this and you can't just add soil to the top, get it out of its pot. Mine's from IKEA, so it's split as usual. Thanks IKEA. This is the closest in size I can find, so chuck some extra soil in there. free up the roots at the bottom a little bit so they grow out into the new soil. Pop the plant in there and give it a little pat down and a water, and it should be fine in that pot for another couple of months. Not exactly repotting this one, we're just, helping it out a bit. Some plants aren't that bothered about being repotted, but others, like Kentia palms, are really dramatic about it. They're the kind of plants that you just put off repotting them as long as possible, because repotting really stunts their growth and you end up with some leaf loss, and it's not a fast grower anyway. They're really sensitive, they suffer really badly from transplant shock. On the other hand, you've got plants like peperomias, which are very slow growing, so they can hang out in the same pot for a really long time. Sometimes with slow growers, they'll be in the same pot for so long that you'll actually need to refresh the soil because it's been in there so long, the soil's out of nutrients. So you basically just get it out, clear off some of the soil from the roots and repot it into the same pot with some fresh soil. If your plant's new, then it's best to leave it for a while to adjust to its new conditions before repotting, because they can get stressed out by the change in environment. And if you repot them and the plant starts having problems, you're not going to know if it's because of the conditions it's in or because of transplant stress. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you get a new plant and it's already so pot bound that you have to bite the bullet and repot it anyway. But try and avoid it if your plant doesn't really need it. I'm off to do a load of repotting, so you can expect lots of these guys to make more appearances very soon. And don't worry about the disaster pothos from the beginning. She is in a lovely new pot and seems to be enjoying herself.